Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, those who are there at New York. Here in Pakistan, it is good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bashir Ahmad, and my paper is Performance Management in Private and Public Sector Organizations, where I have taken Pakistan a case in point. And basically, it is not operated. All right. Now, so this is the scope and the sequence of my presentation. Briefly, I should be covering everything and finishing within the given time, that is 12 minutes. Right, let me show you the complete right. Management of human resource, as we understand, is central to the organizational success. In fact, we relate the performance of individuals to the performance of the organization as a whole. And this is how we try to measure the organizational performance in relation with the accumulated effect of the performance of the individuals. And the actual problem on which we have carried out this study is that there has to be a correlation between the accumulated effect of the individual performance in the organization or the performance of the team to the performance of the organization as a whole. And we find some gap in that. In developing countries like Pakistan, organizations operate with marginally falling any scientific performance management practice. Literature review conducted for this study reflects annual performance reports with periodic performance appraisals considered as performance management, especially by the officials in the public sector, whereas actually it is not the case when we go into the details of the modalities of performance management of any organization. During a survey conducted for this study, a simple questionnaire was floated as to what is meant by the performance management and its applications. Majority of the respondents in public sector organizations termed it as annual performance reports. On the other hand, in the private sector organizations, it was totally on the will and wish of the employer, not following any scientific method of measuring the performance of individuals and rewarding them accordingly. So this was the issue on which we carried out research. Based on this, these were the very brief objectives of this study. It was about understanding the company handling the performance management and application in Pakistan, and to present a way forward so that we could have the correlation between human resource efforts and the organizational output or the performance. Literature review basically focused on understanding the basics of performance management, which included, to understand the firm's philosophy and the objectives of the organization based on different studies, then how the performance management is planned in different studies. We carried out the literature review for the last 20 years, mostly starting from 2000 up to 2023, 22. This was the execution phase of the performance management. When we go into the details, all right, then how the assessment is to be carried out to measure the performance of the individuals. And it was based on the philosophy that if the performance of individuals is not measured, it cannot be improved at the same time. Then the performance reviews, how these are to be carried out, what methodologies are to be followed on scientific grounds, so that we actually know the performance of the individuals and the team members. Then how we go for the renewal and the recontracting for the next performance cycle. And what is the ideal system? Again, we went into the details. It was basically woven around the planning, practicability in designing of the objective, specificity of the performance standards, identification of effective and ineffective practices, acceptability, fairness, inclusiveness, openness, standardization, ethnicality. Right, then we also went through some of the best practices being followed in the world. And we, in particular, in a study which was carried out in 2015, we took the example of performance management practices in the UK, then in Germany, then in Turkey, then in India, China, South Korea, right? And the Japan also said that we could draw comparisons with the practices which are being followed in Pakistan. So then we also studied the key performance indicators in addition to the best practices being followed in the world. This was a qualitative research in debate and argument. It has been based on the data available in the archives of private and public sector organizations, mostly based at Karachi, Pakistan, where my university is located. The standard practices of performance management in public sector organizations are well known, mostly based on the bureaucratic style of functioning, as we find in most of the developing countries of the world. In the private sector, it is mostly based on the will and wish of the employer. And we also went through the best practices, as I said earlier, which are being followed in the world. Right. We also studied different organizations. And then in addition to the literature view, we had three panel discussions. First session was to know the level of understanding of performance management as it appears in the literature view. The panelists included educational managers, faculty members, civil servants, and corporate sector employees, as well as owners of the businesses. In the second session, which was conducted, the panelists dilated upon the complete cycle of practices of the performance management being followed in the organizations and philosophies behind. Then the final session was devoted to conclude and suggest measures to comprehend and put into practice in comparison with the practices being followed in Pakistan with those which are being followed in the developed countries of the world. The focus has been on the practices being followed in the selected organizations to analyze those in comparison with the standard process of performance management. The performance management and measurement, as we understand, is a standard practice at the start of every planned cycle of operation. It is essential to discuss standards with the employees and take on account of the expected performance. Then coaching and ongoing feedback is given. Employees' input and performance evaluation system is also to be discussed with the employees. I mean, with the workforce and the supervisors. Then the complete system of performance review is also taken into account. The major conclusions from the survey based on the two questions, those are as flashed here. A simple survey about understanding the performance management, its application was conducted. It was based on two simple questions. Number one, what kind of performance management system is in practice in your organization and how good it has been? The respondents were faculty members of universities, employees of the corporate sector, managers, come officials in public sector setups, and the random responses from 150 respondents concluded as flashed in front of you in 3 points. 70% of the respondents termed annual performance reports as the performance management system purely the responsibility of the employees. 30% said that the reporting mechanism includes annual performance reports and counseling registers being maintained in the setups. With regard to the effectiveness of in-practice system in organizations, over 90% said there is no system of mutual discussion before the start of the performance cycle. Right.
Minutes left.
Then on the other hand, only less than 10% said that they were briefed about what all they were supposed to do to achieve in the upcoming year. However, there was no follow-up. Right, then let me.
Are you fine, Prof?
It is something else. Right. It has, right. Then it says this means that performance management being followed is without measurement, which turns to the saying that the outcome which is not measured cannot be improved or planned for development of any improving mechanism. It also meant that the employees, middle tier, and even upper management is not being put into optimum utilization in the organizations. Contrarily, if the system of performance planning, mid-course guidance, evaluation, measurement, feedback, and reviews is adopted and put the entire functioning on scientific ground, the organizational performance is going to enhance, rather multiplied substantially. Then the conclusions from the panel discussion as flashed. As I said earlier, there were 3 sessions, and they all concluded that the public sector organizations are bureaucratic in outlook and functioning, and in view of the prevailing culture, their annual reports are taken as base of their career progression. In some of the public sector organizations, however, education, for example, in particular, there is some flexibility to adopt new techniques of performance management, but mostly those are based on the annual reports. Now, since they have their job cards elaborating their duties so they follow the same system, right? The corporate sector is entirely operate in a different mood. It is ownership driven. Hence, it works on the flexible working philosophy. Performance management is done in an unconventional way and based on the performance displayed. It is not time bound. Target achievement is the main criteria for better performance, which is decided by the employer. It was also concluded from the panel discussion that most of the private sector organizations follow the performance management system with the involvement of all stakeholders, which is collaborative and distributive. It contains self-assessment and evaluation by the supervisors and the executive according to the degree of contact. The panelists unanimously agree to that the organizational performance in all business and services, and finally review the recontact setup.
Summarize,
Right,
Prof.
and
Please
yes,
summarize.
please. Okay,
Summarize.
just 2 minutes. Right, then I would conclude with the recommendation that an effective system of managing performance of individuals in terms maintains a continuous follow-up outcomes for the purpose of comparing it with the organizational growth and gains. Computing and information technologies provide a very fundamental base to manage the performance in a befitting manner. Then, according to a survey carried out with the Watson White, only 3 out of 10 workers agree that their company's performance management system helps to improve performance. That, in fact, coincides with the survey which was carried out here in Pakistan and the panel discussions. The performance management tools align with the KPIs. At the same time, it faces challenges like the tracking instrument, especially for the employees. The studies on performance management which we recommend is that principally some of the individual and team's performance scores should correspond to the organizational performance. However, for that purpose, we need to develop measurement tools for the organizational performance.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Prof.
Right. This is the conclusion. You can read. Then this is the survey questionnaire. It was attached to the paper also. All right. This was the themes of the panel discussion. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for that comprehensive presentation. Much appreciated. I think you outlined what's related to the topic. I will take one question, colleagues. Do you have a question for Prof before we let her go? Okay, I'll ask one question. So what were the challenges, Prof, that we were facing when you were conducting this study?
I beg your pardon?
What were your challenges that you were facing when you were conducting this study?
Right. The biggest challenge is that there is a gap between the performance of the individuals, which is measured at the end of the performance cycle, and the performance of the organization. In fact, what we were trying to conclude was that there has to be a correlation between organizational performance and the performance of the teams and the individuals in the organization. So that is, that is one indication that probably the practices are not being followed on scientific grounds.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.